This is Sarah. She didn't think much of her life until a series of unexpected events happened to her, sending her life spiraling downward. Sarah was a fairly average person in Ecuador. She was in the 14% of Ecuador's population that was dangerously close to the poverty line, but are luckily not in poverty, a fact she took for granted. Unfortunately, due to an unfortunate series of events, her family sunk below the poverty line and was forced to move to rural areas for work, where 87% of the rural tribal population lives in poverty. This meant that Sarah was taken out of her school in the city and placed in a different, undersupplied one. She had gone from having enough money to survive and having regular meals, to barely being able to scratch out a living and not knowing when, where, or if her next meal would be coming. Tragedy struck again when her father got an injury working in the fields. His arm had been broken from an accidental fall. Unfortunately, they couldn't afford a doctor to treat or mend it, and her father was forced to make a makeshift cast and pray that he might be able to work in the fields and make income soon, if he's ever able to work again. Sarah joined the 300,000 child laborers and began working in the fields in the wake of her father's injury, earning a meager $1 a day, in the hopes it might soften the economic blow the injury caused. She hoped in vain that a support group might drop by and help, but she knew no support would come to such a rural area as where she lived. And she also knew the government wouldn't help either, since they were spending all their time and money on the Galapagos, where the money came in. As her life began spiraling downward at a faster rate, tragedy reared its ugly head again for another blow. Her sister had gotten sick from the poorly filtered water from the river by her home. Sarah was very worried because, like her father's injury, they could not pay for the medication to cure her sister of her illness, and Sarah had to work twice as hard to balance out her sister not being able to work, and even then it was an uphill battle. 2 weeks later, her sister died from the disease, and they had no money to bury her, much less assemble a funeral, so they had to send her body down the same river that killed her, much like a burial at sea. 3 weeks later, her father contracted a disease due to his homemade splint not protecting his wound well enough, meaning he'd be out of the fields and out of a job much longer than had been originally anticipated. And as usual, Sarah and her family did not have the money to pay for any medication or treatment. After several weeks, he did not get better, and Sarah and her mother were worried that he might undergo the same fate as her sister did. Sarah had began her life at a pretty low economic status, but she was able to go to school and get good, relatively healthy meals and clean drinking water. However, she was soon taken from that life by the claws of poverty, and her life spiraled out of control because of it. Now she's lost and confused as a small ant in a very large world, and now she has to work even harder to avoid being stepped on. Sarah's story may be a drastic one, but the problems represented here are nowhere near as uncommon as they need to be. Poverty in Ecuador is a serious problem, and unless either the government or other organizations step in to help, it's not going to go away for the foreseeable future, if it goes away at all. Organizations like Free the Children are innovating and finding new ways to get rid of poverty across the globe, including Ecuador. Poverty is a very complicated issue, and supporting the organizations trying to get rid of it would make stories like Sarah's be less and less common, and it would help boost the overall economy of Ecuador.
Eliminate poverty. It's our
responsibility.